All right, welcome back, everybody. Day 3 of Authenticate. We're going to kick off this morning with a couple of sessions on diversity. I'd like to introduce my colleagues here, Teresa, who's going to facilitate the session. Karen and Rita and myself are all going to be on the panel. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Good morning. So I'm going to start sharing some facts from some recent report that I have found, some icebreaker numbers to share with the group here. So Forbes just published an article a couple of days ago. The title is You Won't Believe How Many All-Female CEO-CFO Duo Run the 500 Largest Public U.S. Companies. That's the title of the article. So, do you have a number in mind? 20. So in 2017, that number was 1 with General Motors. So 5 years later, how many?
20.
Solid guess.
So you're not taking the hint. Any other guesses? Bingo!
Yeah.
You cheated. Did you read the article? Okay, so yes, only 3 in 2021, and they are Accenture, Insight Enterprise, and Coast Corporation. Then of the 500 companies, 382 have male-male CEO, CFO duos. 5 years ago, that number was 418. So it's trending sort of the right direction. We have more mixed duo, but 3 is not a lot. Then cyberdegree.org have updated their report in October, stating that the turnover in the tech industry cost the industry $16 billion. That's a number. And that ISC2 reported that, according to the research, only 24% of the workforce in cybersecurity are women. Another one with Pew Research, 38% of workforce in cybersecurity are people of colors. So clearly, we have a diversity problem. Clearly. So that's what we're talking about here, why it's important. But before we do that, I like to ask my fellow panelists first questions. How did you get into tech? Since we are, it's kind of like the 24% in this industry. How did you get into tech? Christina, you go first.
Yeah, so maybe introduce myself. Christina Hulka, Executive Director and COO of FIDO Alliance. I didn't get into tech intentionally. Actually, when I was 16, I wanted to be a geologist. And my geography teacher at the time told me, oh no, women can't do that. I was at a girls' school, so it wasn't very empowering at the time, and unfortunately I didn't have the confidence to say, I'm going to do it anyway. So fast forward a few years, I moved to the United States, and I was really lucky to have the opportunity to work on EMV, that chip and pin thing that people do at payment terminals for Visa. And I had a very great mentor who actually took the time to sit down with me and say, what do you want to do with your career? And I said, I kind of want to do project management, and I want to learn more about the technology. I want to be able to speak the language, but not necessarily be a technical person. And he gave me the opportunity to do that, so I was very grateful for that. So it's been a bit of a convoluted journey, but I really enjoy being in tech, and I like knowing enough to be dangerous.
Good. How about you, Rita?
All right, well, good morning, everyone. I'll also introduce myself first. My name is Rita. I'm the co-founder and COO of Authenticate, not the conference, but with 2 L's, Authenticate. My journey to get into tech actually starts quite similar, where someone told me I couldn't get into what I wanted to do. That person was my dad. he loves me and wanted to give me good advice. So I was born and raised in Morocco, and growing up, when I got into college applications, I wanted to get into mechanical engineering. So I had all my schools listed. I got into the schools I wanted to. And then my dad looks at me and he goes, I hire engineers every year. Like, I hire women engineers all the time, but they just never come back, and I don't think you can do it. So it gave me cold feet. I was like, that was my first career advice. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'll go do something else. Ended up coming to the US to study math and statistics, and that's when I've always thought I would do something with tech or with numbers at the end of the day. So I met my co-founder there, Chad, who's sitting here, and we'll talk about Allyship at the end, but it was kind of how I got into this. So Chad has been doing research on single device authentication, and we met and we're like, okay, you know what? Maybe we should start a company together. So a year later, I quit my job. I was in intratech, so I was already in tech, but quit my job to go start a company. My parents thought I was crazy to do that on a student visa, but yeah, the rest is history.
All right, how about you?
All right, so just to introduce myself really quickly, I'm Larson. I'm the Senior Director for Tech Partnerships and Alliances at Axiad. And my story also starts with my dad, but in a little bit of a different way than Rita's. So my dad was a math and computer science professor. So I grew up with a pretty heavy STEM influence at home. And I was very bored one summer and bothering my father, and he got a little annoyed with me. He was trying to give me something to do and set me up with his old Commodore 64 and gave me a book on how to program BASIC. So I spent a summer learning about Commodore 64 and BASIC, and that was how I got into computer science. So my first programs were pretty simple. I was taking basically choose your own adventure books and programming them in for my little sister. And then I'd, because siblings are always very kind to each other, of course, would put in some infinite loops in there so that she would get stuck and could never get to the end of the adventure. So that was my introduction to computer science, and then didn't really get back into it again until I was in college, and just happened to run into some people that needed some help converting Fortran into Visual Basic, and I wasn't sure that I could do it. And I talked to my dad, and he's like, "Oh no, you've got this. It's no problem. I'll help you. But you should just take the opportunity, go with the experience, and see what you can do." And so I started doing that, and then I got into websites, did a lot of C++ programming, and then got into system administration, became a big Linux, Unix advocate, so hopefully some of you are out there as well. And then just have been really lucky to have just different opportunities come my way and be able to take advantage of those as they come up.
Awesome backstory. It's great. Personally, so I am the VP of Innovation and Client Engagement for IDEMIA, but actually I started in tech 20 years ago, a month after September 11, in an internship with Morpho, which is one of the former entity of IDEMIA. So I started in the I just never left. But talk about programming, my school offered programming classes in BASIC as well when I was 8, and my mom just, sure, go. So that's how I started to learn a bit, dabbling into programming. But I wasn't good at it, not like you. Just stay with it. Okay, so that's how you get into tech. Now let's go back to the center of this panel. Why is making the cyber industry workforce more inclusive important to you from your perspective? Karen.
So I think for me it's making sure that we have diverse ideas coming into cybersecurity. Cybersecurity affects everyone. From my mom to my nieces, now that they're getting into all these different online games and things, and the more we're thinking about it in a holistic way, the more that we can come up with solutions that really work for everyone across the company. There's a lot of really great research out there on diversity of teams, how having diversity in thought and background yields better results for people as a whole. So there's a woman named Kimberly Crenshaw. I recommend looking her up if you haven't. She's done a lot of really great research around how diversity really matters and having different opinions, different backgrounds, different schools of thought when you're trying to tackle these like complex and meaningful problems really yields better results. And so that's why I think it matters.
Yeah, I totally agree with Karen, but I think mostly is when you have a diverse team, you're also, your solutions are different, your ideas are different. When you're brainstorming new products, solving problems, having different sets of people from different backgrounds, different genders, ethnicities, all these things really help it helps your solutions to be more inclusive. In some cases, it can help you attract new talents because it's natural that you attract people like you, and your workforce is very likely to attract workforce like them as well if you're hiring. But also if you're trying to enter new markets, I think it's really important to have, if you have some cultural awareness within your company, it makes it easier to enter new markets internationally and elsewhere. So I think it's important.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle, being involved in the FIDO Alliance, which is a global organization. We have many participants from Asia, from Europe, from the Americas, a very diverse organization. And when I look at our board of directors, again, we have people from all over the world who are sitting on the board. And to me, I chair the board, so it's really important that I make sure that everybody gets heard. And this is about the success of FIDO as an organization. That everybody, regardless of whether English is their first language or not, we do business in English, regardless of whether they're older, more experienced, and have been on the board for 8 years versus brand new to the board. It's really important to me that everybody gets their opportunity to speak, because what that does is it makes our organization, it makes what we do that much more valuable to the world. We're working on standards, so we need to make sure it's accessible and available to everybody, and it meets all those different use cases around the world and across different demographics and different cultures.
Very good. All right, so the next topic I want to talk about is obstacle and opportunity. So based on experience, what are they in terms of how to increase diversity in tech, cyber, or identity, right? I think we come from different backgrounds. So what obstacles have you seen or had to overcome, and what are the opportunity for us to, as an industry, that everybody in the room can do and address? So I start this way, I'm come back this way, so Christina.
I think it's really the lack of diverse talent. I think everybody in the room is probably well aware that cybersecurity is increasingly a focus for many organizations, and finding the right people, the right qualified people to fill some of those roles is a big challenge.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The talent pipeline.
I second that. The talent pool and having enough people who apply for these jobs is really important. But I think also being able to keep them within your organization. I think most people make the decision whether they want to stay or leave within 90 days of being hired. So making that onboarding period really inclusive and making sure they're feeling welcomed, whether that's respecting their holidays in your holiday policy, I think that's a really important one. Most people, if you're hiring from different backgrounds, people want to know that they can take their religious holidays or any kind of belief they want to celebrate. Just make sure you're giving them those days off if they wanted them. Excuse me. But I think also being able to, if you have any diverse people, maybe put them, send them to recruiting events, because for most people, when they see people like them, they know they belong to that place. So if you have any diverse people, let them attract talent like them. And I think that helps a lot, because as I said earlier, you attract people like you, and I've seen that in, coming here to the US, I've always looked into people that look like me in the room and kind of went to them to talk first. So I think that matters a lot. And yeah, being able to keep the employees is also really important. So being more inclusive.
Yeah, I would add to that too. I think there's also an awareness issue around cybersecurity. I can't think of that many kids that are saying they want to be like a security architect as their dream job for career day, or really aware of how to get into a field like this either. So I think as an industry, there's also some reach out that we need to do to make sure people know that these careers are there. They're good paying careers. And there's a lot of different aspects of cybersecurity. I think people get very hooked on that kind of like hacker image where you're hanging out in a basement with a million different monitors and computer equipment all the time, and then forget that there's other avenues and other needs in cybersecurity as well. It's not just red team, blue team activities, but it's also doing things like this, like policy and figuring out standards and how different applications are going to work together in a secure way, and also supporting interoperability. So there's some interesting problems to solve, but I don't think people are always aware of that when they're looking at college degrees or when they're looking at career options and career choices. And I think that's something that we could be doing better as an industry as a whole.
So I take that as all of you in the room, when you have opportunity to do career day, whether it's K-12 to elementary school, go do it and be the career day role model, because that is what's lacking. Aspire people to join the industry. I think that other research have talked about, pay gap and social norm being an obstacle for people of color or women to join cybersecurity. Actually, the We Are Tech Women did a research and just published it, that in their participant, 20% of the participant women in this research are thinking about leaving the tech industry. And in McKinsey report, Women in the Workplace, there are more women leaving the workforce more than men in terms of turnover. So the trend is actually trending the wrong direction. Women are leaving the workforce because it's more challenging. I think the pandemic didn't really help with that trend. One thing actually, since Rita is on it, because when we were preparing this, we talk about other challenges and obstacles. And oftentimes when we talk about diversity, we talk about gender and people of color, but what's being often overlooked is generational age. So Rita, you want to share that? What you mean by that?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. It's interesting because I experienced that firsthand. A lot of people walk to me, and sometimes the first question is, "How old are you?" I don't know if it's coming from a good or bad place, but it's funny, and it's I don't know what to do about that question, but it's also. I've been to career fairs where we were hiring, and a lot of people walk to us and they're like, "Yeah, but we're too young. Are you hiring young people or like college students?" And we're like, "Yeah, totally. We love, if you're a freshman, just apply for the internship. We'll take you." And in fact, we've hired a lot of freshmen at the start of the company, and they stuck with us until like they graduated, and then they got hired full time. So it's, we don't have, like, it's, if in our case, the way we see it is give them the opportunity. Like, it's not because they're young or junior. You should invest in your people, and it really starts with everything. Could be gender, ethnicity, age, anything. Like, let's not let these things be a bias, because it's 2022 and we have better things to worry about. It's not be so stuck on like things like that. And that also reminded me of, I was looking at a research that showed that for women, if they see a job posting, they would only apply if they think they fit 100% of the requirements, and men would apply if they fit just 60% of the requirements. So making those job postings more inclusive for even junior people, you know, make it sound like you're willing to take on and mentor them if needed, whether that's with gender or with age or anything. So I think it's really important to start doing that.
Very good point about the mentorship piece and the job posting. Actually, that's correct. One of the things we talk about later, what can work, that's definitely one of the things we have seen. And age is just a number, right? And certainly, people are rude to ask your age right off the bat. Never ask age, right? Isn't that the best practice? Okay. Okay, so we have a couple more questions to go. And after that, we open up the floor for questions and maybe more discussion. Since you guys are here, it must be because you're interested in this topic, right? So we talk about recruiting and the challenges. And we also talk about retention. I'd like to talk about mentorship and allyship a little bit here. So we are Tech Women, again, they did this research, right? And in their research, it's all women answering. 55% of women responding saying that having a mentor have made a huge impact, like literally huge impact in their career. And 67% of them seeing having access to mentor in a company, it's a very attractive point in their decision-making in joining a company. So what you have to say about mentorship? Do you see, what's your experience, number one, and how we can foster that in our industry or in companies? Christina.
So I touched on it at the beginning. I was very fortunate in that I had a mentor. I previously worked for Visa before I joined FIDO. And he was very supportive of what I wanted to do with my career. He listened to what I said, and he enabled me to move in that direction. So that's the one, as I was thinking about this panel and some of the issues we've been talking about, that was the one thing that's jumped out in my mind as probably a critical point in my career in terms of giving me the confidence and enabling me to move forward in the direction I actually discovered I wanted to go once I was established in a particular subject matter. As in turn, you know, as I've evolved in my career, I've got older, and people don't ask me if I'm an intern anymore. I make a point of looking at the staff who I work with and the people in general that I work with in the role that I have now, and not sort of explicitly, but if there's a need for some guidance, I am very conscious of the power that brings to a relationship and somebody's career. And I'm more than happy to help that person to find their direction too, because it really is life-changing. If you can find somebody who listens, key priority is to listen, and then supports you in the decisions you make for yourself to be successful, it can really change somebody's career. So I think mentorship is absolutely the number one thing. And I've seen, you know, again, working for Visa, a big company, they have mentor programs where they would match people just through a computer program algorithm. I'm not quite sure how they exactly did it. But those programs never really worked because it was forced. It was almost like, well, we've got to do this, so we'll put a program in place. I think it has to be genuine. It has to be people who are really interested in wanting to support other people and helping them move forward in their careers.
And I would add on to that a little bit. Like I've been through some of those kind of forced membership programs, both as a mentee and as a mentor, and I've never seen those work really well. But what I do think is very important is sponsorship and advocacy. It's having people in leadership and management positions that are conscious of who those experts are in different areas and making sure they are sought out and included in the room. You can't have impact if you don't have a seat at the table, but somebody's got to invite you to the table. So it's having that person that's higher up that is committed to making sure that people are heard and the right people are part of those discussions. That's really key. And I think that's hard to do. Often decisions get made in informal ways. Maybe a hallway conversation, maybe bumping into somebody. But if you really want to further diversity and inclusion, you need to make those processes a little more formal, and then you need to make sure that the right people are at the table and have a voice in those processes. And so I think it's almost a step beyond mentorship. The mentorship is great, and making sure that you have people in your career that can help you and teach you is very important. But it's also as important that you have people higher up that are making sure that you're getting those opportunities as well.
So I'm going to ask actually a question in the room. How many of you have mentored someone or intentionally be a mentor? You should, all hands should be raised because you are all here in Authenticate. All of you, it's time to mentor. Those that have not raised their hand should go back and start mentoring. I'm serious because I would say 5 years ago, I was in a meeting, company get like a little training session, and I was sitting next to a former customer, and I share that I don't feel, and I just got promoted to VP, and he asked me, why you're not mentoring? I said, I'm not ready. I don't feel like I have everything figured out. I don't think I can mentor. And he's like, Teresa, if my daughter were in this company, I want my daughter to be mentored by you. You need to mentor. You need to just get in and jump in. And I think it took me a year later to decide to get off my fear, to say, okay, I will mentor. I will at least mentor my teammate or the interns. And I started that way because I actually didn't think I am qualified to be a mentor. And since then, I actually launched 3 mentorship sessions in IDEMIA, matching people but volunteering. So it's not forcing. It's like you volunteer. I asked for executive to be volunteer to be mentors, and then we match with interested employee that want to be mentored. So it's less force, but if you have done just even 2 years in the company, if you want to share your time, it's about generous about your time and just share. And mentors, all of you, put that in your 2023 goals to be a mentor. We need more mentors. So,
I'm going to add something about allyship. I've been fortunate enough to have allies around me, and let's face it, it's a male-dominated industry. If this was not known yet, but I think even having men in this room is great. Like, thank you all for coming here. This is you being allies. So I think it's been very significantly helpful to see that even reaching out to other men who I'm looking up to, and they are super helpful, and that has been game changing. So whether it's mentorship or allyship, it's very helpful. So please keep coming to these kind of talks, and take notes and share them with your team, because it starts here. So
yes, it's sponsorship, right? Mentorship and allyship. And funny enough, the same research I was looking at, thinking that only 19% of the women responding to that research see men or most men as allies. Because actually more than 79% of the women feel like they are not being heard by men at work. I'm not pointing anybody here, but numbers are there. So I think have something to do being intentional about showing, and probably you say, I will support all women, but being more intentional, reaching out and being an ally or sponsor or mentor towards your peers. All right, so we still have some more time, and so I have we have one more question here. So what initiative or program you have seen working successfully in your org or in other organizations? And if not, what would you propose if you have the magic wand to reach parity in this industry?
You're asking me first.
Yes, I'm looking at you.
I think a lot of what we've already talked about is absolutely important. It's about lifting each other up. And I don't think it matters what your culture is, where you come from in the world, whether you're male or female or choose to identify another way. It really doesn't matter. I think the more diversity we have, the more successful we can be as a whole, especially when, as in many cybersecurity roles, we're looking at things from a global perspective. We're trying to solve a global problem. So we need that global perspective to be able to do that. I also think, and Teresa, I was talking to you a little bit about this before we came up on stage, I think by nature women don't tend to support each other as much as they probably should. And so I think by being conscious and being aware of some of those challenges, certainly in the workplace, and lifting each other up and supporting each other is really important. I'm not sure that there's a specific program I put in place. I think it's just a general raising of awareness that this is something that can bring so much value to the industry that we're in and make what we're trying to achieve that much more successful. If we all have this awareness and take positive actions to support each other in everything that we do and how we interact with each other in the workplace.
Yes, speaking up for each other, right? Allyship, men speaking up for women, or women speaking up for other women.
And vice versa.
Vice versa, right? I think that's the, it'll be impactful. Sometimes we don't feel that will make any difference. It does make a difference. And partly that's, talk about women helping women. It's what drove me 2 years ago to found Women in IDEMIA Network after I joined Women in Identity, that inspired me. So Pam, if you're here somewhere, she actually brought me into Women Identity at the Identityverse in 2019. And that got me, I would say, pushed me to say, okay, if the industry from another company can do that for another woman in the industry, I can do the same inside my company. And I basically brought those principles in Women Identity into IDEMIA and do a Women in IDEMIA Network in the North America first. And when that started, we were just having women talk to other women in a small group. And then we start doing events for everyone. And then it got replicated into other regions. So literally other regions, like, how did you do it? I'm like, we just do calls. We just make virtual calls and just recognize the woman in the company. And that got replicated in the other region. And now it becomes the first ELG in IDEMIA that is focusing on women. And the goal was to create a sisterhood to clearly say we are here to support other women. Women need to be the first one, the steward, to support women. And then we replicate that to other groups. That was
scary for me to do that. I felt it was a lot of imposter moment. It was a lot of like self-reflection. Am I doing this as a self-interest? Am I doing that just for myself? And it was a lot of fear on my own to step out. But being part of woman identity helps me to get the encouragement I needed to say, no, this is the right thing to do, to speak up, right thing to do. And so, how about you, Karen? What's your experience?
So I've had really a mixed experience, honestly. I've been a part of some of those diversity inclusion groups that have been really great. We started kind of an informal women in tech group when I was at Ubico as just kind of a time for different women across the company to get together, talk about different things that we were doing, but it was very informal. And then that expanded. We had some of our male coworkers asked to come join and be part of that, and that was a very grassroots effort. But it was important. It allowed people to see who those people were inside the company that were advocating for things like this, and also gave the women, and there weren't too many of us, unfortunately, kind of a time to be able to catch up and talk with each other and just kind of see what was going on in other parts of the company. That networking piece can be very critical, and I think sometimes when you're like the only one of your religion, race, gender, whatever the differentiator is, often you get a little left out. And those informal networks, those informal conversations are very important. So having that time to be able to reach out, talk to different people across the company, see what's going on, you get more traction, you know what's happening, and it also gives you an opportunity to help support each other in ways that you might not have realized. And so I think that can be really, really important. I've been part of other kind of DEI groups that felt like somebody's promotion checkbox and were very ineffective. So it really depends on the intent, I think, of the group. And it also revolves around who's willing to step up and lead that and put that together. And just having that on its own isn't enough. You have to have that allyship. You have to have the other people involved that are interested in those types of initiatives and really opening up our industry to like more diverse backgrounds and more diverse people. And it's good to know who those people are because they can help you. And it's good for them to know that you're interested in these things too. So I think some of those groups can be really powerful when sponsored and done the right way.
Yes, actually, what we notice is it's more powerful when it's not driven from HR. DEI, mentorship, allyship, it's not HR function. It's all of us. When you are at the executive or upper management level, actually driving from that, it's much more powerful than it's an HR program. I mean, personally, I felt that way. I feel it's people to people. It's not because HR, put it to place and do it together.
And to add to that, I think one of the worst things you can do is start a DEI initiative if you're not committed to it as a company. I know just from interviewing people that can be a major turnoff. If you go to somebody's website and they talk about how inclusive they are, how they're changing hiring policy, and how they're supporting people internally, and all these different things, and then you get into the interview process and you find out that it's all lip service and not really part of the fabric and the culture of the organization, that almost does you worse in terms of building credibility with those candidates than it would if you just said nothing. So if you are going to go into that, make sure that you're committed. Like, don't just make it a checkbox. Don't just make it something that you're doing because the board told you to and you don't really care about. But you've got to go into it and be all in because people do care about that. And I've been finding in my career, especially in the last, I'd say 5 years, a lot of candidates are asking more and more about what efforts are in place how people are included, and what the company is doing to advocate for those people. And it's becoming a selling point for companies, and it's also something that people are making decisions about whether they want to join your organization or not. So from kind of a leadership perspective, you want to attract the good people, and you want to have those diverse workforces, so you need to be able to invest and really support that internally.
I have a question for the audience. I'm switching focus on you now. Which have your company do a intentional recruit, like an internship program, like internship sessions? Good. Please do. Right, the internship program started, I think we just talked about like having interns change. We did a cohort, like literally we did 60 interns all at once in the company and make a big difference. That summer, the last summer, was really a fun summer to have a group interns to get not just 1Z, 2Z, sprinkle across the company as a way to start changing that dynamic in the company. All right, I'm going to open up the floor. Are you ladies okay?
I'll actually add one thing to that.
Oh, yeah, sure, Rita, go ahead.
I think it can also start before internships because by the time you're looking at interns, they're probably in college or after college. So if we can start it even earlier, invest in and sponsoring those minority groups, even in high schools and earlier, because that will keep the pool growing. Because if start them young, as they say, go earlier and try to invest in them, show them that they can be in this industry, so that they don't grow up terrified from cybersecurity, thinking, oh my God, it's so hard, or identity, what is this? So I think starting them even earlier can help solve the problem long term.
I'd agree with that. Just based on total informal poll of people that I know that ended up in technology, most people started kind of around middle school age, kind of middle school, high school was when most people started developing an interest in programming or started teaching themselves how to program. So I think that's a really good point, Rita. And there's some great opportunities for volunteering and getting that message out there. My sister's a science teacher, and so I do a virtual presentation to her science classes every year, kind of talking about what I do in cybersecurity, and it's hilarious, and I ask great questions, and it's a lot of fun. So I'd really encourage all of you as professionals and part of this industry to get out there and make sure people know about the careers that are available, in particular those younger ages. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to open up a question from the floor. Or comments, or share your experience. Up the mic.
Thank you. So apologies I joined late, so sorry if you've already covered this, but there might be some more we can go to. In terms of allyship, what practical tips do you have throughout the day-to-day, perhaps in meetings, to make sure that people's voices are heard, especially if they might be shy or in a remote landscape?
The first one that comes to mind is being able to correct microaggressions throughout the day. So if you're not even part of, you hear something wrong, you can go back to the person and be like, hey, that wasn't cool, that person, you said that thing, or, just these everyday things make a big difference. I've seen people do it, and I think it meant a lot. I think that's one thing, but also just, raising awareness continuously and making it an everyday thing. It's cool to have International Women's Day and International this group day, or month now. But it would be cool if it just becomes an everyday thing. Let's just make it part of everyone's routine, and it never stops. You're constantly educating people around you. You're constantly trying to support people, and I think that will help long term.
One easy thing that I've seen be really effective is just amplification. And so, The idea is, once you're aware, you'll see it happen all the time. It's one of those things where once you know about it, you can't unsee it. But next time you're in a meeting and somebody presents an idea, see who supports it. Because what you'll see a lot is men will support each other's ideas. And then when a woman brings an idea to the table, it'll be crickets. Like nobody will say anything. So what I found works really well, and with those people that are interested in allyship, is to help them be those advocates and help them like fill the dead space. So when you're presenting an idea, the concept is basically that they'd say, "Oh yeah, hey Karen, that's a great idea. Tell me more about that," and just amplify what you're saying. And what that does is it opens up the conversation. It gets rid of that awkward silence, but it also makes sure that credit goes to the person who brought that idea to the table. So what I started doing just as a behavior change was taking some pretty detailed notes about what ideas people were bringing to the table, but then also who said the idea. Because often we're in a meeting, you're having all this discussion, and ideas will get attributed to the wrong person. They'll get attributed to the person that people think should have had that idea, not maybe the person that actually said it. So the amplification is just a really simple way of making those allies better advocates and better supporters in an active way in meetings. And it's very easy to do, but it really has a big impact.
Yeah, Karen, I fully agree with that. I'm in a relatively unique situation where we have a co-executive directors of FIDO Alliance, Andrew Shikiar, who you've probably seen on stage during the keynotes, and myself.
He's right there.
Oh, hey Andrew. You're behind someone.
Being an ally.
And there is, whether you like it or not, there are implicit biases out there. And I want to thank Andrew because he is an ally with me. So when I'm chairing a meeting and a response or a question or sort of a sign gets directed to him, which it does sometimes, he always redirects back to me. And so there's some really good teamwork going on there, which I very much appreciate. An awareness of how these sort of dynamics work, which we may not necessarily be so aware of in everyday life.
And I raised hand, I witnessed it. So I can say Andrew did that in one of the board meeting in Germany. I was like, very good. That's allyship in action, is like literally just, nope, not me, Christina. And that's actually very powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tina.
And I didn't just say that because Andrew was in the room, because I actually didn't know he was in the room.
Thanks for the great comments on the panel today. And I know that a lot of specific advice was given here today. Rita talking about starting early with the internship program, and Karen talking about being authentic so that when you do the interviews with the candidates, they know whether you're committed or not to the program. One of the challenges we face, obviously, as a female founder, we're growing and we're hiring at all levels, including senior level. And one of the things, Christina and Teresa, that we were discussing at breakfast, challenge is that the percentage of candidates that we get for entry level roles that are female is much higher, but that percentage really falls off at the more experienced roles that we're hiring for. Do you have any tips or specific effective techniques to increase the percentage of candidates we get for the more experienced roles?
I would say take on the responsibility of growing them instead of recruiting higher, because it's just the math. There's not many female senior executives in the workforce. By more women are leaving the workforce, right? So take on the challenge and grow them, develop them. I see that as, you know, our responsibility. I see around me the more like the younger pipeline and bring them up. And actually, you'll be surprised how fast they grow and they develop. I think when you say senior, more experienced people or management, it's a context thing. I think we can mature rather quickly by enough exposure.
Yeah, and I'd add to that too, that what I've seen really help as well is being open to other types of backgrounds for those positions. So, you know, if you're hiring for somebody that's coming in a leadership position as a people manager, you know, do they have to have a degree in computer science, or can being around technology but having a degree in something else, you know, meet that criteria? Because like Teresa was saying, you know, there's a pipeline problem. I think there's less than like 20% of women majoring in CS now, which is sad for other reasons, but it also means that there just aren't as many women and people of diverse backgrounds that are qualified for those leadership positions. So if you can be open to other types of backgrounds, other types of skills, you know, that may be appropriate for those leadership roles, that'll open up who you can, you know, open up that pool, and then also give other people opportunities to start in this industry as well.
And I think actually I was sharing at breakfast this McKinsey report that was released yesterday, McKinsey and the Leading Org, showing the funnel that becomes more and more tiny. So entry level, it showed that women in tech, this is all in tech, women in tech were the vast majority for entry level. But as you go, like VP positions, C-suite executives, it becomes like the roles inverse dramatically. Like you see there is way less women. It's in the single digits or double digits, but barely double digits. So I think one of the reasons, reading through the reports, it was that there were not clear paths to promotion. So one tips I think is really like, one of the tips I would think of is having clear promotion paths and career paths for those entry level, because it just doesn't make sense that we have more women entering the workforce in entry level, but then we don't keep them growing. And when you look at it, just doesn't make sense. The math doesn't add up. So I think there is, and the problem is happening in the middle where there isn't clear promotion paths. So maybe let's fix that, and in a few years we'll see different numbers, hopefully. Hopefully.
Oh, questions? Oh, okay.
We came a little bit late as well too, so I'm sorry if this was already answered, but I think a lot of these efforts are of course really important across like an organization working together. Everybody needs to be a part of it. It's kind of like part of that culture fit of a company is everyone's working towards the same goals. So my question is, what if somebody is not being an ally and like doesn't really want to participate in the active efforts? They're a great performer, they're great for the company, but they're just not being a supportive part of the DEI efforts. How do you go about that process, or how do you manage that situation?
Don't. You can't force it. And if they're a high performer, well, maybe. But if they're high performer, they're smart enough, they will see the positive and they will join the party, right? When you have a fun party, either they miss the boat, then make a FOMO, right? I would say let them miss the party until they see that they're missing out. But you can't force it. Definitely one thing, you can't force DEI. It has to be, you need to share, highlight, bring a spotlight on the positive. How fun this is, how good it is, and how much good it is for everyone. When we create a Women IDEMIA network, I have men come send me emails like, can you please take me out of this email list? Doesn't apply to me, it's not my thing. And I responded saying, well, sorry, I don't have a specific list. It's for everyone to know, for honest, you just don't show up. It's okay, don't show up at the meeting, but you just be aware. And by the way, when some other regions starting a women group, they were not going to include men. And I said to them, the women founding the group, I said, the men, I will challenge you. You probably have an important woman in the man's life. Mother, sister, cousins, right? Or grandmother. Every man have an important one or two or maybe several important women in their life. They should want their significant female in their family be successful. So I would say they may not know they're missing out until they realize they're missing out.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's not something that you can force people, but you can build momentum, and that's the important thing. Yeah, the important thing is making it visible, making sure that people know that it's there. But you're not going to force somebody overnight to change their mind. And I've seen it happen a couple of times with a couple of my coworkers, where I worked with these guys, and they don't really care about it until they have a daughter, and then all of a sudden it becomes very important. Yeah, so it's interesting. I think it's a little sad, honestly, but it's not something that you can force people into. They have to want to come, and they have to want to come willingly. And part of that is by expanding that allyship network and making it the norm. And once it becomes the norm, in your teams and your organization, other people will follow suit. But it's not something that you can, put on a performance goal, like, oh, you have to participate in so many DEI activities this year and get traction and have it work.
Thank you. We're out of time in the panel. I hope you have enjoyed this panel and this exchange. And we're going to do more of these in the next Authenticate, I hope. Yeah. So it's wing to Megan and Andrew in the back. So, thank you.